I have a picture actually of me in one of the high chairs, and my uncle has one of the returnable old Milwaukee bottles. And I have beer in my glass baby bottle.
Holy geez.
So probably that's, I mean, like one, maybe 18 months.
Jules, The Making of a Woman from the Inside Out is the book. I'm speaking with the author. Thank you for joining me on Knockin Doorz Down.
You are so welcome. Thank you.
Yeah, well, this has been a pursuit for a while. I think we've been trying a couple months, but with those crazy schedules. You know, the book, when I was going through it, the chapter that stuck out to me the most, chapter 2, Seen Not Heard. I don't know how many times when people ask me, what do they think was some of that stuff that led me to alcoholism? That title, that chapter title right there. For you, why Seen Not Heard? What was it in Jules' story that really, because that's really touching on your childhood. I remember you talking about your stuffed animal Grover and
yes. I still have Grover, by the way.
Do you?
I do. I actually have a picture of him and I on my IG. You got to check him out. He is ragged. He is showing he did not age well or gracefully, I should say.
Well, he is Grover. So
he's Grover, right?
Yeah,
exactly. You know, that was a stage in my life where my mom had just remarried. And before, I was an only child. Right. I was a daddy's little girl. I mean, I was admired and praised and loved unconditionally. Right. And then now we've like shifted into this madhouse of like I'm become one of 6 kids. Right. We're living in a trailer, you know, and it's just, I mean, we're packed in kind of like rats and like all of a sudden it's like, I'm kind of invisible. You know, my mom shifted into this, I don't know if it was like a survival mode, but like literally, when you look at the establishment, she lived in the front portion and I lived in the back. So even on a physical level, she had detached from me.
Right.
And so in with this new dynamic, and I mean, he was, my new stepfather was just, I mean, he was big and he was from the military and he just had that real, you know, that stereotypical like demeanor and yeah, it was best if we were seen and not heard. And so amongst all of that chaos, I just felt myself like when I look back to that space, I just shrink because I didn't want to be in the limelight anymore. I did not want to be daddy's little girl anymore. Like those were some very, very unsafe places for me.
That's interesting. You talk about shrinking because I still I'm 6'3", but you know, about 170 soaking wet. But I still have this thing where I hunch and I have to work on it, that demeanor. And I know, and I want to get into your bodybuilding later for my own selfishness because it's something I want to employ more in my life. But did you carry that throughout, that really kind of through teenage years, early years, being more meek?
I think when I was younger, it was on a physical. And then as I grew older, it became more of a psychological. Right. So that's when I think my ego took over and, you know, I was a loudmouth and I was promiscuous. And so on the outside, as we say, my insides didn't match those outsides. Yeah. But on the inside, I was still that, you know, that really just a real frail, that little person was so frail because there was just, the trust was like almost like ripped off.
Yeah.
Right. So yeah, that it took a while, even in recovery, to let that like stand back up and roll my shoulders back without hearing the chatter in my head of how ridiculous it looked.
Yeah, boy, that voice, those voices that can permeate from childhood, man. That I often say we're all a bunch of damaged children just walking around, you know.
Yeah.
Let's dig a little into the trauma. You know, I mean, divorce is hard enough. You were what, about 6, 7 when your parents divorced?
Like 7, 8, right
Seven,
around
eight.
that time. Yep.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, that's hard enough. But then when you had other traumas introduced and there was a good amount of sexual trauma that occurred as well.
There was a lot of changes, and they happened rapidly. And I had nobody to bounce things off of. Right. I think that was the hardest part. And then, of course, here I am. I'm a kiddo who's now moved. So even the structure of my teachers, they don't know who I am. I don't have, I have no rapport with them. So it was almost like I was just taken out of that dynamic and brought into an area where nobody had to recognize me. And like I said, I wish that nobody did.
Yeah. Which is a little weird because we have this inner thing where we're screaming to get out, but yeah, at the same time, we kind of don't want to be,
Yeah.
I sit in some modes at times, and I said this to my girlfriend, like, no one invites us to do anything. And then when they do, I'm like, oh God, we got invited to do something.
I'm not going to go anyway.
Yes, screw that, man. So as you detailed in the book, going through the different traumas that you did, one of the things I didn't catch, where did Dad go at this time? Your birth father?
My biological father?
Yes.
My mom then made the decision that we were no longer going to have contact with him. And so, yes. So then he was pretty much ostracized at this time. I mean, we're in the 70s. And so this is at the time where your integrity, I mean, you are totally judged on your character.
Right.
And so the banks wouldn't give him a loan. I mean, it was small town. It was that stigma of you were just, the small town drunk. Right. And so my dad was dealing with all of that. And then ultimately my mom remarried into this family. And then we moved, right? Out of sight, out of mind. And then that's when I took on the last name of this new family. I mean, it was just kind of like, all right, like it just did not fit. Nothing fit. And so here I have like the despair of my dad, he's gone, right? And I really don't understand why. Because of course, all of the things that happened for that separation, I was sleeping. I wasn't really a part of all that. And so then, we move into this new area. My stepbrother, the babysitting stage, right? Before my new parents were even married, he was showing me adult books saying, this is what you'll do as a woman when you grow up to be a woman. If you want to be a big girl. I mean, all of those things, which again, it was very, very opposite. I'm 7, I'm 8. What do you mean? I play, I put playing cards in the spokes of my wheels. Like, what do you mean? This is what women do, right? So, and so this is going on. And then I have the very like heavy demeanor of my new stepfather. My mom is absent, and so it's just this like, what the fuck? Like, and so, and I'm scared. I'm just scared. And then what happens is the trauma that starts that I'm pushing down by being quiet. Kids are meant to be seen, not heard. What's happening is this is starting to turn into a rage. Yeah. Because it's not coming out. And so the abuse continues. And this starts to seep to the top. Yep. And now I fall under the category of you're too emotional. Oh. Settle down. Girls don't supposed to be loud. So then I shift into a whole other box. Yeah.
When is that shift to when you start using substances? I'm going to guess maybe alcohol first.
In the Midwest, that's something, this is the time when you would put a little brandy on your baby's gums if they were teething. Right. To calm them down, you put a little alcohol on their gums. I have a picture actually of me in one of the high chairs, and my uncle has one of the returnable old Milwaukee bottles. And I have beer in my glass baby bottle.
Holy geez.
So probably like 1, maybe 18 months. So yeah, it's just been a part of my life all my life. In fact, I didn't even know it was the damn problem.
Oh, sure. Absolutely.
I didn't even know.
And how do we when it's our environment? Not only are you sharing that it was a day and age and a time that the whole environment is that, but let
Mhm.
alone clearly, they're fine with alcoholics, and a great gentleman that's been on here, Dr. Rob Kelly, and all of his research, he's an alcoholic. He's like, we're born.
Yeah,
We're born. So you have all that stimulus right there that alcohol is just, it's just what you do.
exactly.
Oh my
Yeah, I
gosh.
call it, it's like the condiments on the table, the salt and the pepper, the mustard and the ketchup.
Oh, good gosh. I found that a lot of my anger came with puberty because that confusion started. And so I was confused. Very similar story, pornography shown to me, which I've shared about here with my dad, and thinking those things. And yet here I was insecure, getting no response from girls whatsoever. What's wrong
Oh,
with me? All these different things. So when for you did you really, in reflection, start to see that? Because a lot of people tell me, is that puberty?
that's super interesting because I'm on the other end of that spectrum.
Right.
So the sexual abuse actually became my vehicle, my, being promiscuous
Right.
got me to where I needed to be.
Right.
So I lost my virginity when I was 12.
Mm.
But again, sex has been in my life
Yeah.
since I was 9.
Yeah.
Doing this as a truth or dare is no big deal.
Right.
I have a very absent mother who didn't have those conversations with me. Of course, I want to fit in with the cool kids. And it's
Yeah.
something I've done before, let's face it.
Yeah.
So, so I think it's been a combination. So, when puberty did hit, that's really where like those rages really, I was just like, I don't give a fuck.
Yeah.
I'm promiscuous. I'm not listening to anybody. My family actually comes back to the Midwest for a divorce. And at that time, I'm about going into 9th grade. And so if you can imagine, here I am, I'm this California girl, I'm loud and, just all outspoken and dressing the part. And then I moved back to a very rural town, in a small town in one of the states in the Midwest. And I was brought into the counselor's office, and this is what just blows my mind. This tells me there's got to be a source, because I don't know if there's this many people who could fuck it up along the way. Like, you know what I mean? It's like the source
Yeah.
had to have something to do with this, because I just don't think this is humanly possible that this many things could line up. Like there's a message here. So I went in and I was told, by the counselor that, Jules, you're really just not going to be very successful here. And I'm in 9th grade. It's like that first semester where you kind of do the check-in and I was like thinking to myself, of course I'm not going to be, I don't look like any of your people. It was almost like I had adult life skills trying to be a high schooler.
Right.
I was too big. And so, and he's like, there's other ways to get your high school diploma. And that's all I heard. And that's all I needed to hear. And I dropped out. And I hit the pavement hard. And that's where it all began.
Yeah.
So at age, what is that, like 14, 15, when you get
Yeah.
into, freshman year, I have an adult tell me, you get out of jail free, baby. That's exactly what I did. I ran from all that shit.
Of
Where I ran
course.
to, I had no idea, but I was going to do it my way.
We're going to start. We're because we know everything at that age. So we're going to start our journey, because older people, you don't know shit. But it's not
No,
like anyone was talking to you really anyways, like
no,
talking at you, but not
yes,
talking with you.
big difference.
Yeah.
Big difference. And I had to go through the whole healing process of, how did my mom not see this? How could you not see your daughter get sucked into this huge family? How can you not see she's getting lost? My grades reflected it, my personality just all of the signs.
Yeah.
Which made me realize, like, what would it have been to be a mom in that situation? Perhaps she did know, but because of the way things were set up during that time, she had no other choice than to stay in a stable setting.
Yeah.
I don't know what she made an hour. I don't know what she was willing to sacrifice. I was never in those shoes.
Yeah, and it's important that we reflect back. I've had to do that with my parents too, and you know, my dad, of course, who was the one that exposed me to pornography, he was an addict, and I actually have an unreleased episode I did with him that I just don't know that I can do yet. It's so emotionally tough, but you know, we had a lineage of sexual addiction and abuse on the male side with him, and he went through it. And so, you know, reflecting back, of course he wasn't going to steer me in a different direction. He's loading himself up with chemicals, and he's getting the chemical stimulus from, you know, being promiscuous outside of the marriage and pornography and all these things, because it was the environment that he knew as well. So he didn't think he was doing anything that was wrong, let alone, you know, I'm a little bit younger than you, not much, but our parents, and it's not a knock, society was different as far as emotional maturity, you know?
Oh, yeah.
And so I try to look back at that one, and there was any sort of anger that was still lingering and working my sobriety. It was like, yeah, it's a different day and age. And it
really is.
It doesn't give it, you know, an excuse per se, but it helps you understand.
Yeah.
So
yeah, it does.
That was really, really valuable. But so you're at this point, fuck it. I'm off to the races. I'm doing what Jules wants to do. When do we really, like, I mean, your life, gosh, I don't know. An hour isn't enough to talk through these things, because I really want to get to so many of the different tools that you've used to find. But when do we really start ramping it up? I know other drugs come into play, and of course, what we'll talk about with your sexuality and different things like that are so insightful. But when are we really starting to just get like problems? When does it hit the problems? When it's causing you financial, legal?
I'm grateful I never got legal. That's still on the yet agenda, right? It just means I didn't get caught. That's the only difference.
I always get caught, Jules.
But I was constantly moving. You know, that's back when the internet was starting to boom, chat rooms are happening. And let's face it, I can chameleonize like the best of them.
Yeah.
And so now the internet takes me to all of these places, and I can be exactly who you want me to be, or who I think you want me to be, right. You know, and there's a lot of hope in that, because ultimately people think, you know, oh, she just went out and partied and she was irresponsible and up all night and blowing coke. And okay, let's scratch that. That's Hollywood. Right. Like, what really happened is I wanted nothing more than to make enough money and get some sort of education so I could get my feet underneath me. I wanted nothing more than for everybody else to go the fuck away. Like, I don't want to have to keep doing things to keep a roof over my head. Like, you know what I'm saying? It's like, I don't want to be this little puppet. Yeah. And so I have 7 transcripts. I was desperate for change, right? But again, the alcoholism, the delusions, the not being able to see the big picture, hanging out with people who clearly, have no idea. I'm water seeks its own level, you know? And so I circled that drain for 19 years, you know, and the will and the courage to not stop. Yeah. And so, and it pretty much, the last 3 years, I had to pull out my tax returns to be able to figure out, like, where did I live and where did I work? And I moved 13 times.
Holy heck.
That's once a quarter, once every 12 weeks. That was the cycle of my relationships, from dating to blowing up and moving out.
Did you go through a cycle where it's pretty much, this was something that was me? I wasn't a cheater or anything like that, although my porn struggles were underlying in all my relationships till I really confronted it. But I always seemed to intrigue and have someone ready once this relationship ended.
Absolutely. And better yet, this one ended because I was ready to go to the next one.
Right.
Because the other one was dying.
Yeah.
And again, I'm just trying to survive out there.
Right.
There would be no question. So yeah, I would I would go to visit, and I would just never stop being the guest. And then I had the sex. So then that draws in a lot of people, that open-mindedness to do this and that. And, that could be a pink cloud for many weeks, you know? So I manipulated the situations with the trauma and the tools that I had been given in the previous phase of life.
Yeah.
And so, but the magical day, I didn't even realize what was happening. Not even a clue. I was in the back of a car, and I nonchalantly said to my friends, I just wish I didn't drink so much. And within 30 minutes, I was sitting in the rooms of recovery.
Wow.
I don't know what it was. I don't know. I can't, there was none of the things people tell me it was supposed to be, could be. I don't know. I went into this room and I was disgusted. These people, they stunk. They were nothing like me. They're the hoity-toities, or they're the bottom drinkers. I mean, there was just nobody in there was at my caliber.
Right.
Which now I see I really needed to be in that room, right? And I cried the whole hour.
Wow.
I hadn't cried in like 8 years.
Wow.
Like my life would never allow that. That's total defeat, right? And I haven't picked up a drink since.
Wow, that gave me the chills.
And that was in 07.
Wow. And you're right. And that's the hard thing of getting some people. I've started to do a little bit of sponsor work, is them going, well, I'm nothing like these people. That's such a common thing. It's like, sure, we're not.
Yeah.
Oh, wow. Jules, that's amazing. That gave me the chills.
And looking back, and especially like writing the book with Marlena, I mean, that's what we did during COVID. I'm like, I got to be of service. Source has put this in line to me multiple times that, I need to be doing this. You know how it is. You tell a normie your story and they're like, dude, you need to write a book. So I finally just wrote the book, and the title, I mean, she's almost like an entity of her own. The making of a woman from the inside out is totally what this story is about. And it's not necessarily the events that took place, because as humans, as we know, as humans, we can talk about the ball game or the football game, whatever, but really it's how we feel when we have the experience. That's why movies are so amazing, right? Like it just takes me in. That's why you got chills as I shared that bit with you, because we have this language of the heart is what I've heard it called. And so that is how we navigated through the storylines. And that's how, which is super awesome, that people can be right there with me through these ups and these downs and the despair and the we're here again, and oh my God, are we getting ahead? And it takes you right along. And it's a very powerful story, listened and read through that avenue.
I think so. And one of the things that intrigued me is your absolute openness about your sexuality. You do highlight in there an event that it really, I think, it was the first excerpt that I read from the book that really touched me. That I was like, boy, I really want to understand a little bit more. But you're talking about an instance where you're swinging with another couple. Was it Matt, your then husband?
Oh, he is still my then husband.
Is he? Okay. I couldn't find anything, so I wasn't sure if you folks were still married. But you're talking about an instance, and you're very open about that. And it intrigues me because I've thought, could I ever have that kind of lifestyle? And just with the work on myself, I'm like, no, but I don't have any judgment. I just know for me, I would probably overindulge, and then I would sidebar stuff and hide it and feel shame. So I love that you talk about your life. You own it. No shame. This is who I am, which I applaud you for, because so many people sit in judgment. It's like, fuck,
Yeah.
if there was a camera for all the stupid shit I did that was wrong, it's like, who am I to have any sort of thing? But it really made me do a really neat introspective look. And the part that caught me and got me emotionally, talking about an instance where yourself, Matt, another couple, and it's the way in which he touches this woman, because it wasn't just raw sexual expressions, almost like a loving embrace. And there was something in you that triggered. And that was a big wow moment for me. And I know you put it in the book for you. It was.
Mm-hmm. You know, it was most interesting with all of this, especially the sexual realm of this entire story, right? This lifeline that I have, is that I've grown through things. I've done a lot of work, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I've really, really picked apart what is mine and what wasn't mine. So for instance, I'm a good person with a bad disease.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not a bad person. You know, things like that, like things that would allow my heart to open up a little bit, right? Because before it had to stay closed. It was survival. And then to be, you know, I don't know where that, we'll say, courage comes from to share so openly. I only know that how I feel when another woman does that to me, and how connected I feel to her, how loved I feel and accepted by, you know, maybe it's the complete opposite of what we were talking about earlier, of having to curl in and go small.
Sure.
You know, maybe she's actually identifying, she's witnessing me, validating me. I've got chills all over my arms. You know, maybe that's what it is. And so, and I know now, you know, by practicing this, by me initiating that, ultimately allows that other person that space. The door's open, baby. You don't even have to put your hand on the knob, right? Like I've already revealed, you know, and keeping in mind along that journey, my trust was gone.
Sure.
And let's face it, I couldn't even trust myself. Every decision I was making was crap. So, I mean, it was trust in others and trust in myself.
Yeah.
And so to actually get in a long-term marriage, my longest relationship before Matt was 1.5 years. I'm at 8 right now with him.
Right on.
So, but I mean, it took, like they talk about the layers, right? The layers pulling back in, and it took going, and oh my God, I have to just take a side note. I would have such crazy chatter, right, in my head, you know, and it got to the point where he's like, I am going to out talk that tape that plays in your head. And so every morning I would wake up and I would roll over. He gives me my cup of coffee in the morning. He's fantastic. And on there would be a little Post-it note that says, I'm not going anywhere.
Wow.
I'll find these Post-it notes all over. I'll still find them some days today, right? I'm not going anywhere. And you'll see that in the front of the book, actually. There's a dedication to my husband who says, I'm not going anywhere. And it was that constant to get to the point where I could actually consider, because let's face it, the men in my life before were my bread and butter.
Right.
The men in my life, they were the ones who put a roof over my head. I mean, they were my everything. And you want me to share him? What? With my currency?
Yeah.
Are you nuts? Yeah, there was a lot of uncomfortable times. But then the cool thing is that he told me about his jealousy. Blew pop my top off. Like what? Like, you experience jealousy? And he's like, of course I do. I'm like, no, you don't. You're a man. Why would I not? And so we have this little thing. It's kind of like if you're taking this little gut wrench, you know, I'm kind of doing this gut wrench like this.
Yep.
And so now that's our little sign. So he'll get the little gut wrench and I'll get, you know, whatever. And that's our ripcord. But, you know, it was to be able to go into that space and actually connect with him.
Yeah.
That he knows what that feeling feels like.
Yeah.
So when you talk about, I'm afraid to, tap into something like this, that, well, fear is for a reason as well. It's a great navigator.
Yeah.
Right. And so intuitively, if that's what you're hearing, that's truth.
Yeah.
There was a lot of steps along my way, but now I see the things that once caused me harm are now the gifts that I can give.
Right.
So because I was promiscuous, the harm that had been done, I now have eyes and ears for things that a lot of people don't. I have empathy. I understand what it means to be the outsider, to enjoy things with my body that other people can't understand, or heaven forbid, don't touch there.
Right.
Right. So it's all this, that balance. Remember, we started with that word in the beginning, balance.
Yeah. The thing I still struggle with.
Yeah.
Thank you for sharing that. Yeah, because it's, I when I'm hearing it, I remember back in one of the things that intrigued me. I think it was the Playboy series or something. They had that about the swinger lifestyle. Another opening up, maybe I haven't talked about on here with the pornography, but I remember sitting and watching that series, not for the sexual acts, but it was really intriguing to me, the conversations that the couples had, because it was really open, honest, and vulnerable.
Mm-hmm.
And I share my stance because my partner, she and I, we've had very open, honest conversation, and we just know not for us. Again, not a place of judgment at all. Who might have fucking judged for, so that's really intriguing that you made a note to include that in there, because I think regardless of someone's lifestyle, their perspective on your husband and other people's lifestyles, that thing misses from so many relationships where you just get rigorously honest about yourself and with your partner.
It is. And that's kind of what we're tapping on, right? This
Right.
connection between humans. We talked about it like in recovery, right? This is on a sexual realm. People, let's face it, humans, they want to be loved.
Mm-hmm.
We want to be loved and accepted exactly the way we are.
Mm-hmm.
And and I think, I have this stigma in my head about swingers, right? I see the hairy chest and the gold chain. And we've got to be in Florida somewhere.
Hey, Jules, what's going on? Get over here, hey?
Exactly. Crack your ass. Yeah, I have it. I have that stigma. But then when I look at, those conversations, real quick, I had met a couple. We were at one of the resorts, and it was just more of like a lifestyle resort.
Mm-hmm.
It was more of like, if you like to do this, but if you like to just hang out with naked people. I mean, it was kind of very, very, very bland, very vanilla. It wasn't any expectations. And we had become friends. And we had done a couple trips together. We did some sailing together. It just turned into a beautiful relationship. And so, my book was released. And of course, I sent her a copy. And she had an incident where she was in a real dark place. Mm. And her husband flies nights and wasn't able to catch things at the right time. And she had attempted suicide.
Oh my gosh.
And on her way to treatment, so she got the book in the mail and she threw it in the bag. And as she was on her way to treatment, she started reading my book. And she sent me a text that said, if I would have read this book 2 days ago, I wouldn't be in this plane. Wow. That type of shit right there gives me the fucking courage. I'll tell you my shit. I will tell you what it takes. So somebody doesn't have to do that. Holy crap. So we are meant to love, and we are meant to connect, in the ego, I'm grateful for her because she protected me when I was in battle. Yeah. I'm not in battle anymore. I've got this amazing source. I'm guided by it. I feel it in my heart. I meditate. I mean, I've got a different source, right? Yeah. I have no desire to drink or drug. Yeah. Ever.
And I love you for it. I do. Wow. Thank you for sharing. You got me teared up. It's been a couple episodes since I cried. Thanks, Jules.
You're welcome, baby.
So how did the bodybuilding, a part of loving your body, did you hold in reflection maybe a shame towards your body, even though it was a tool? Because it's the interesting duality of who we are. And I can relate to what you said. Ego helped me survive. These tools help me survive. Now they're not survival tools anymore. They're thriving tools. They're the essence of who and what you are as a woman. How did the bodybuilding come into play with that? Because I had a lot of body shame. And so I'm asking from a selfish standpoint.
It's one of those, I had a sponsor one time say, when are you going to stop hating your body? And I was kind of taken back by it. I look at, from my experience at this stage, the way I see it is I have both masculine and feminine energies.
Sure.
Before, even though I was in a feminine body, I really had to be in the masculine. I had to protect myself. I needed to provide myself. I mean, all of the things for survival. I have appreciation for that. Also in my book, you have read about being a female dominant.
Right.
Okay. So that is kind of, we'll just have to throw it out for some of your viewers, kind of like that dominatrix umbrella. And please, if you don't understand the two, please take a couple minutes to educate yourself, because they're not the same.
Right.
But they do fall into that adult industry. And so as a female dominant, I also have a lot of quote unquote power, influence, nurturer, disciplinarian, those sorts of things. And so when I first got into bodybuilding, this is just, it's so human. I was like, I am 40 years old and I want the cellulite off my thighs. I hate it. Done. I hate it. And so I went into one of those big boy bodybuilding gyms, and because those girls don't have a stitch of cellulite.
Right.
I said, I want what you have, right? Repeating what I've learned in the rooms. I want what you have. I'll do whatever it takes to get it. And so I did. And for that first year, I did not get off that meal plan. I ate every meal, 6 meals every day. I drank my gallon of water. I didn't have a cheat meal for a year.
Wow.
I was desperate for change. And I started to see it. Then, of course, you get rolling along and people's like, oh my God, do you compete? And I'm thinking, no, are you nuts? No, you don't see in yourself what others see, right?
Yeah.
And so then, things changed, got different trainers, la, 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 la. And somebody said, you should give it a shot. I'm 44. This is where it's very important, the stigma and dogma of others, what to listen to and what not.
Yeah.
And so I thought, why not? And I did. I placed third. There was only 3 of us, but I placed third. I took my little medal home. I was very excited. And pretty much just continued on my path. I don't feel shame in my body because I've done the work of my sexuality.
Right.
Right. I've done a lot of workshops with all women. We'll sit there in the nude and we'll explore and we'll touch and we'll understand each other's. And I've done a lot of energy work on my body. So that shame does not reside.
Right.
But what has happened is I have sculpted a body that I find is art. When you look at art in the museum, you see that chiseled, beautiful body. The effort that went into it, everything about it, I just admire that.
Yeah.
And so I continued along my journey. I got another coach. I did another show. I took third once again. And one of the judges contacted my coach and said, there's one show left this year. And I think if we put her in figure, she would do better. 12 days later, I have to learn how to walk in heels. I mean, I'm just a mess.
The
I'm
bikini, the whole, yeah.
I just want to eat a cheeseburger. I mean, I'm hangry is a totally different definition. And so I knocked it out of the park. I took a first, a second, and a third, and I qualified for nationals.
Wow.
Then following year, I took third in nationals.
That's badass.
And that was last year.
That's so awesome, Jules. Congratulations. The work that goes into it, man, is phenomenal. And I love what you said there, is it was once again that desperation that for those of us in recovery talk about. And I tell everyone, I think there should be a 12-step program implemented in high school. I think it would help tremendously with our youth, especially going out now with so many things that they are facing. That's insurmountable. Anyways, I could go off on that forever, but we're talking about you. Yeah, congratulations to the Making of a Woman won a Firebird Book Award. 2 of them. You got first place the LBGTQ, and then what was the other one? An autobiography.
It was a bio. Yep, biography.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah, she's done fabulous. We got a bunch of podcasts. I mean, she's an entity of her own. Totally. Yeah, it's been a fun ride.
It's interesting you go state the title of the book, The Making of a Woman from Inside Out. How now, with where you're at in life, some people might have a judgment. I think your figure's beautiful. For people that are listening or to the episode, watching it on YouTube, see the stuff that was posted on social media, the amazing black and white photography of you and how sculpted you are. And I love that kind of stuff. I might tell you a funny story about when I went and saw the statue of David here in a second. But how do you look at femininity, woman, by definition now? We're in such an interesting time where some people won't answer that or they get offended. But how do you look at it?
I think there's the difference of the energy within and the energy without, on the outside and with the inside. Again, the masculine and the feminine are like our 2 main energies.
Sure.
So on Tuesday, I may wear a ball cap and a pair of tennis shoes. And on Thursday, I may wear a pair of heels. And, so I personally, as with anybody, have that choice of how I want to slide on that scale, right? I don't think Source made us so black and white. I think boxes and rules and these sorts of things give people who don't understand, give them comfort. Like people go into I'll put you in a box because then I know exactly what to expect from you. Right. Okay. So it's fear-based. Okay. There's either love or fear. So if I'm working through eyes of love, there's no wrong way to be a woman. I actually blogged about that on Women's International Day a couple years back. If you think about it as a woman, here's my let me get on the soapbox real quick. It's like I am told how to wear my hair, how to wear my makeup, how should I dress? I mean, black women are told about have short hair, have long hair. My God, I am told how to have sex. Do I fuck loud? Do I fuck quiet? Do I fuck with the lights on, the lights off? Everything. I am judged by somebody else. So there is no wrong way to be a woman. Some of the most amazing women I have met have been extremely butch, have the biggest loving hearts, dog lovers. And let's face it, transgendered people who don't even fit in either box. They're actually seen by Native Americans as being the higher ones because they can see from both angles. So I think with anything, I think, again, it's more comforting to look outward because then that means I don't have to look inward. Yeah. But as we know, that's not where the shit's at.
Yep.
It's here. So for me, I've had to learn to really be okay with as I am. I'm a muscular woman and I have a pair of heels on right now. This is my duality. All of this is authentic. So there's no fear.
Thank you for sharing. Yeah, I had a great conversation with Caitlyn Jenner years ago,
Oh,
and posed that to her as well, to kind of ask. And it was really interesting because she made a great joke. Yeah, I mean, it takes me a lot longer to get ready in the morning, but it cracked me up. And then right after that, we're talking motorsports because I'm a motorsports aficionado, and she takes me out to show me her Porsche and the car that she had bought because her dad had it, and it was beautiful. So thanks for
yes.
sharing. All right, my
That's
story
awesome.
of David, real quick. I've not
Yes,
told this on
yes,
the
your
pod.
turn.
So we're in Europe. My mom, myself, my aunt, my grandparents. These are my mom's parents. And my grandma has to see the statue of David. And I'm like, I'm in. So everybody's like, we got to take a different train and all this. Like, look, grandma wants to see it. I want to see it. Let's go. I mean, I love art. And I've always been a fan of bodybuilding too, as a kid. I just couldn't achieve it. I'm an ectomorph. I can't gain weight to save my life. So we take this long train ride, go into the museum. My grandma walks directly right ahead, looks up, and in my recollection, she was looking right at the penis and just goes, not that impressive, and walks away. And I'm like, really, grandma? All this way. And I'm like blown away, like, my God, somebody sculpt, look how amazing this thing is. And just not that impressive, walks away like a 6-hour train ride to get the well, Jules, before we get to some random questions, and I like to leave the guest with a final thought, but I really want to dig into your daily work with yourself. Selfishly, I've been picking off of people's different stuff. So can you talk me through maybe an average morning? What's the get up routine? What's the focus for the day, and so on?
It's changed over the years, right? But where I'm at right now and what's really worked for the last probably year and a half now, is I live in Texas, so it's very, very hot here. But what I've done is I've set my terrace up with a fan that kind of has a little mister going on, and I have this beautiful setup out there, and it's real tranquil to me. And so every morning I go out and I grab some literature and I grab my journal. I have my earbuds, and what I do is I read something spiritually based, something to kind of get my brain rolling on the right track. And then I will journal on it. There are times when it's like I don't want to talk about what's in my book, right? Like whatever it is, it's like I don't want to talk about humility or And what I do is I make sure I sit there for a moment and I'll be like, what do I supposed to write about? And it'll be something else that comes up. And then I will literally write a whole page on it, right? So I use it as a guide, but I'm very careful not to try to manage it. After that, what I do, after I feel like I'm pretty cleansed out on thoughts and I'm on the right track, then I roll out my yoga mat, keep my earbuds in. I do Insight Timer, and I turn on like morning meditation music. And that's the ones that have the different types of beats in the background. And so I do that, and I go through a series of poses. And this is where I connect with my body. And I hear what's tight, what's not, as a bodybuilder, my body is changing every day. I train it differently all the time. And so I really be able to connect my head to my heart. And so at that stage, then I'm like, okay, and then I go and I feed myself, I sip on some coffee. I like to ease into my day instead of plunge into my day. That was a huge learning curve for me. Because you hit the door running, right? Like you hit the ground running, and that's what sets me up for the rest of that day. So that was a key factor for me to just ease into my day.
Sure. Yeah, I've had people tell me that that's a big area I need to work on, because they're like, you literally, if you don't, especially for me, the type of person I am, they're like, you can immediately go into fight or flight right away, and no wonder you're still really struggling with anxiety. And I'm like, shit, you're right.
Because you're physically putting yourself in a fight or flight. Yeah. Physically.
Yeah.
By moving quickly, there's a totally different reaction if you ease into something with your, opposed to rapidly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because I'm like, okay, kids, get up. Come on. We got to get out the door shortly. Make sure you eat time. Don't forget to brush your teeth. It's that frantic.
And just that vibration makes me like,
sure.
Have you known that? Like, there are people where you're like, oh my God, you leave there, you're like, I am exhausted. Or the ones that you leave and you're like, oh my God, I'm so thrilled. Let's do this. And I want to try this and that. And these are the vibrations we can share with people.
Yeah. Which
means that we can also pick them up too.
Yeah, that energy exchange is incredibly important.
It is.
Because for me, my boundary thing, and it related to my last relapse, which luckily was only about 3.5 hours, but was very much that of someone just sucking the abundance of energy out of me for their emptiness. And it's like, I've learned that one. Now I'm rolling forward here, but you're about the fifth person who's like, take your day slow. So
yeah.
Oh, damn it, Jules. Now I got to listen to you and all these other people that it works so great for.
Let me challenge you real quick.
Please.
The way I learned about this energy is when I had to read the room as a little kid. So again, one of the things that were bad are now good. So when I would read the room, I'd walk into the room and I'd have to read that room energetically. Was it safe? Should I stay? Who's all here? Right? So if you read the room again, so if you're coming in at if you're able to gauge that yourself, if you pause, right? And kind of what you did as a kid, that cautiousness. I mean, you went to run in and be like, hey, no.
Yeah.
So have you ever done that where you walk into the room, engage it?
Absolutely. I think I still struggle with some fight or flight stuff and hypervigilance because the last time my girlfriend and I went to this friend of mine's jazz club that they own. Nice place. We're getting our non-alcoholic, our mocktails and charcuterie board and all this, but we're kind of like dead center watching the jazz band. And she's, are you okay? I'm like, no, I'm really uncomfortable. I can't see what's everything behind me. I don't know what's going on, So I still kind of struggle, but I never thought of it in that way. Wow. Thank you.
It's just your intuition.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Damn. Wow. Well, I could talk to you forever, Jules. We might have to do this again. Oh, I've got a really interesting question that occurred to me. You talked about how, so God, we didn't even get into how your parents passing around the time of your sobriety. There was some, we'll have to do a part 2 down the road.
All right, baby, I'm in part 2.
You are awesome. I'm loving this. But, you just used the name Jules, but you also brought up, so the last name you had at birth and then it changing. Did simply by going as Jules help you with that identity situation too, of like I am whole and complete in who I am? I don't need the last names, or is that just a concerted effort for privacy?
It was when I got sober. My real name is Julie. And one of my friends said, you're a diamond in the rough. And that's when I took on the name Jules. And now I look at it with that kind of love, right? Like it's just a matter of time.
Yeah. I love it.
Yeah.
Thank you for sharing. Yeah, I was curious about that. Like, why just Jules? All right. These are fun, random questions. Okay. Have a good time with them. If you were stranded on a deserted island, you had one movie with you and one music album, what would they be?
Birdcage.
Nathan Lane is so great in that. And of course,
Birdcage and ABBA.
Really? ABBA?
Yes.
Tell me about the ABBA love.
My God, ABBA is like happy-go-lucky music.
Sure.
I would be dancing around the island. Oh, yeah. I'm going to be crazier than a loon, so I might as well be dancing.
True. Oh, man. Birdcage. God, Hank Azaria was so great in that.
Oh, my God.
Oh, God, I need to revisit that movie. It's been too long. If you could have dinner with any one person, living or not, who would they be?
Oprah Winfrey.
Why?
That woman has moved mountains. She is definitely one of my spiritual gurus at this stage of her life. Have you read her, anything about her, where she came from?
Oh, yes.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, talk about a woman that took, wow, that kind of trauma. I mean, it's, thinking about it makes me emotional to do what she does. Extraordinary.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And did it all against the odds.
If you could have one superpower, what would it be?
Ooh. Oh God, I don't know. Let me think. For some reason, maybe it's because it is a challenge, but navigation would be really nice.
I've never heard that.
That is my husband's superpower. Mine is, of course, is the intuition. My husband's superpower, I don't. What's yours?
Mine would be healing. And when people go, oh, that's sweet. Not in the way that, you think, but like I was present just before both my grandmas passed, and I don't know what level of pain they were in. So it wouldn't necessarily be healing to, prevent the end of life, but maybe that it was more of a peaceful journey. Cause I know that my dad's mom was in a lot of pain. Oh. And so for that, just like, maybe just be, or even in the aspect of if somebody like a mental health related type issue, or that people like you and I, the trauma that does so much, for me, it was the most painful thing to confront, I was completely numb. People still go like, oh, what were you running from when you were drinking? It was like, I was actually wanting to feel something. I was numb daily. I was just a numb person. So I was like, oh, this is the only time I can feel joy and pleasure and, anything. Yeah. So, maybe to just put a hand on someone, and even if it's a momentary thing, that give them a little clarity on it, so.
That's powerful.
Of course, the book, The Making of a Woman from the Inside Out, Jules, this has been an absolute pleasure and a privilege.
A great time. Thank you.
Wonderfully fascinating woman. And I'd love to speak with you again down the line.
Yeah, let's do it.
If you have any words that you kind of want to share with people about life through your experience, what might you lend?
Looking back when I was struggling and not having any direction, knowing that I was exactly where I was supposed to be, doing exactly what I was doing. Mm. There's a source out there that is right there with me, and it's part of the bigger picture.
This podcast contains the views and opinions of the Knockin Doorz Down hosts and their guests to the show. The content here should not be taken as medical advice. The content here is for informational purposes only. And because each person is sharing their unique perspective, please consult your healthcare professional for any medical questions. Views and opinions expressed in the podcast and website are our own and do not represent that of our places of work. While we make every effort to ensure that the information we are sharing is accurate, we welcome any comments, suggestions, or correction of errors. Privacy is of the utmost importance to us. For those wishing anonymity, people, places, and scenarios mentioned in the podcast have been changed to protect confidentiality at the request of certain guests. This website or podcast should not be used in any legal capacity whatsoever, including but not limited to establishing standard of care in a legal sense or as a basis for expert witness testimony. No guarantee is given regarding the accuracy of any statements or opinions made on the podcast or website. In no way does listening, reading, emailing, or interacting on social media with our content establish a doctor-patient relationship. If you find any errors in any of the content of this podcast or blogs, please send a message through the contact page. This podcast is owned by KDD Media Company.